So in today's video, we have a guest joining us who, like myself, attended in person the trial of the nurse Lucy Letby. This video is going to discuss what she experienced, having sat in court witnessing firsthand Lucy Letby giving evidence. So many thanks for joining us for this episode, Vicky. I know you attended the trial yourself back in June of this year. First question that I have for you regarding attending Manchester Crown Court was, what were your first impressions of Lucy Letby? So you enter the court, you've got there for the first time, you've walked through the doors. What were your initial impressions of Lucy Letby?
Well, I got in there a bit late. I got in there 10 minutes after it started. And when I walked into the room, there was this woman reading out evidence. And I was didn't really know what was going on at that point because I'd never been in there, didn't really know where to sit. I was still kind of figuring out what I should do. And this woman was reading out evidence like really confidently and professionally. And I just assumed that it was a policewoman reading out evidence. And then as I sat down and settled down, I realised it was actually Lucy Letby really confidently reading out a nursing note. And I was very surprised by just like how professional she came across.
Sort of like her general demeanour, basically.
Yeah.
So what were you expecting? I guess many people go there with kind of like a preconceived idea of what they're going to experience or who they are going to see giving evidence. What were you expecting to see given what you'd read in the newspapers and the live reporting?
Well, I had read loads of accounts of people who had been there before, which was really intriguing to me, and they was quite varied. So some of the early ones, when she was being questioned by her own barrister, they were saying that she was like snivelling, crying, pathetic, like not able to get her words out. And then the later ones were saying she was cocky, combative, really self-assured, arrogant. And I was surprised. She didn't seem like anything that I had read, really. She was just she was self-assured, really, really self-assured. Very confident, but yeah, my preconceived idea was that she was someone who was not doing a very good job on the stand. But although her answers were stupid, the delivery was very, very interesting and confident and realistic. The delivery was almost like made her seem really credible. So even though the words themselves are stupid, the way she was saying it comes across much better in real life, despite how she does often say the same things.
So I'll just get this right. So you went there pretty much with your mind set on, with what I've read throughout the evidence of this trial. So you've been following it, I'd imagine, from the beginning. At the point that you actually went there, you were, fairly convinced in your own mind that this was a guilty person. You wanted to go there to see how her responses came across in person.
I was open-minded. I thought there was going to be more of a defence than there was. But yeah, I already went into that room sure that I was watching a serial killer.
That's interesting. It's interesting you also talk about other people's experiences. I also remember looking back at some posts where, like you say, people had a differing opinion of. Some people said she was robotic. Some people would say she was bitchy. Other people would say, no, she comes across really well. She fights her corner. But not once did I ever really hear of anybody say, this person's a victim, or this person is really struggling, or this person's being bullied. I never got that feeling. And I think a lot of people who haven't followed this case will look at the photographs of Lucy Letby, the nurse, the pretty girl, everything to live for. And then they probably perceive, she's being persecuted possibly for something that she hasn't done. And they put it across that maybe this person is actually a victim. But I never got that feeling seeing her in person. I never got this sort of victim mentality in terms of how she presented herself outwardly.
No, she was very bolshy to me, and she comes across as somebody who is not someone who's easily bullied at all. She seems to me someone who could be like intimidating and able to defend, like someone who's very much able to say what they want when they want to say it. She didn't seem intimidated at all by Nick Johnson. She didn't seem fazed by anything that I saw.
So you would say someone who was quite assertive.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in there for a good few hours and driving home, having left there. And bearing in mind, I'd entered there with this good sort of idea, 80% that this person's guilty, and I'm going there to sort of not back up my beliefs, but I'm going there with an open mind, and I'm expecting what I believe to more evidence to back that up, basically. And I actually felt the complete opposite. So anyway, I drove home from there, and I remember listening back to a lot of the podcast episodes on this case, the Daily Mail podcast, because I wanted to go back, refresh my memory about all the case, because I really thought that I'd gone in there and I was witnessing someone who was telling the truth. So I went home, and I remember distinctly laying in my bed at night, looking up at the ceiling and thinking to myself, how can this person be innocent after everything that I've heard? And I'm trying to work it out in my head. Okay, could this have happened? Could that have happened? I was actually trying to find reasons why this person could actually be, in fact, innocent, and sort of challenging my own initial beliefs to some extent. And it wasn't until I attended on a couple more occasions that I realized, hang on a minute here, what she's saying doesn't actually make much sense. The tone in which she delivers what she's saying is very credible, but she wouldn't expand on anything. She wouldn't expand on any questions that she was asked. She wouldn't go into detail. And there were clearly occasions where she would have remembered certain things, and she completely and utterly denied it. And I actually remember sitting there looking at her, and I wouldn't say rage was the right feeling, but I just felt really pissed off with what I was witnessing. I just thought, you're a liar. You are a liar. And I remember that, just feeling that my opinion had completely flipped. The first few hours, as I say, on the first day I went there, she completely had me, 100%. The more I looked at how evasive she was, and the more and more evidence that came out where she clearly and utterly lied, yet she was still exactly the same. I think this was one of the moments that I realized, was that when she started to lie about very simple things like the arrest, like her social life, and her attitude, the way in which she was clearly caught out in a lie, didn't change. So I thought to myself, hang on a minute, if you're clearly lying about this, you're being proven to be a liar. You could be lying about everything else, because the way that she was just didn't change at all. And I think that is just genuinely how she is. She's a very, very controlled person.
She's got the poker face. She genuinely doesn't react. She genuinely can play it off. And there was a bit like that on the day I was there. So she was being questioned about baby Kay. And this was the time, basically, the computer record showed that she had entered this record minutes before this baby collapsed due to her breathing tube being displaced. And these records would have required her going to the cot side to get the paper records and bring them back over to the computer. And this was literally like in the minutes before the baby collapsed. And she was being questioned about this. And I was rereading through the reporting again today, and this didn't come across, but there was probably about like 6 to 8 questions from Nick Johnson, like, and where would you have got the papers from, and where would you have done this, and what would that involve? And she was so evasive. She would not give a straight answer. Eventually, after literally denying it about like 20 seconds before, she said that she would have gone to the cot. And then he was really triumphant, and he was like going, aha, and like this, that, and the other. And that was when he eventually did that, oh, we can dance the dance if you want to. And then he got told off by the judge and the other barrister. But the police in Court 8 where I was, they was all laughing and sniggering at this whole ridiculous exchange. But she just said it so confidently. She said all of those things confidently, as if they was all true, even though they was somewhat contradicting each other and like blatantly evasive. But she was just so confident with doing it. You would never imagine from looking at her that she had been cornered and caught out into basically admitting she was right by a baby that had just had an attempt on its life. And she was just so unreactive and like composed. Like you can really see how when Dr. J. Aram allegedly walked in on her, that she could have easily played it off and convinced him that there was nothing going on, even though he literally caught her red-handed.
And I think that's a point that I want to make, is that I know some people are going to listen back to what I've just said and, well, you thought she was guilty, you thought she was innocent, and maybe she is, and this, that, and the other. I can't stress to you enough that the way that she phrases it, the way that she phrases things, the way that she delivers her, speeches, even the yeses, the nos, whatever she says, comes across incredibly convincing. And you can excuse anybody for being there for a matter of hours, taking this in and actually buying in really to what she's saying. And it's not until you look at the finer details in this case, and I think that a lot of people look at this case on the face of it and say, well, there's no evidence.
Loads of medical experts. It's not just Dr. Dewey Evans. There was a neonatologist, a pathologist, various experts about the insulin and all that sort of thing, radiologist. They all agreed that these babies, these 17 babies, had been assaulted or murdered, and there was not a single expert who could dispute them. So when you've got 17 babies who have been severely attacked or murdered on a ward, it's then just a case of who did it. They couldn't find anyone to disagree that these babies were murdered, these babies were attacked. So to me, that's the real biggest evidence, because that's like medical.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think for me, a lot of people have picked up on this case after the fact. I'm seeing a lot of people now coming forward saying that this person's innocent and this is just like this case from 20 years ago and blah, blah, blah. And it's all based on statistics. This case is not based on statistics. No. It's based on the medical evidence of how these children were before and how they collapsed and how they subsequently, in many cases, died. This isn't a case of, well, Lucy Letby was on shift, therefore they've blamed her. That's not what happened. It's how the children died. That's what makes them suspicious in the first place. It's not the fact that they had these deaths and Lucy Letby was there. It's the manner in which they died, the rashes that appeared on some of these children. And that's what led them to the investigation. This isn't a case that is statistics based, as far as I'm concerned.
No, there's actually, from what I've read quite a few of these healthcare serial killer cases. There's actually quite a lot of evidence compared to similar cases. Like there was 2 direct witnesses, Baby E's mum and Dr. Jayaram. You don't often get that in healthcare serial killer cases.
And when you look at, like I say, I mean, again, it's circumstantial, but the fact that she passed this course just a week before Child A is found, or Child A is attacked and ejected with air. A week earlier, she had passed this course on IV and the dangers of air embolus. And then when she's about to be removed off the ward, she's getting all flustered because she knows that the hospital are onto her. She then starts filling out false Datix forms, claiming that there's pieces of faulty medical equipment that could cause an air. Like, come on, like. It's so obvious that this person's creating a false narrative to try and explain what she has caused. If they then go back and look at these children and how they died, it's so obvious.
Yeah, there was a few cases when I watched her, and also from reading of the live reporting, where I get the impression that she's not very good at figuring out how other people think, and she doesn't really know how to look or act innocent. She plays it off purely by her being confident and by being so good at using the tone of her voice and like delivering her answers. But some of her answers are like really stupid, like with this Datix air embolism, the false Datix report of a bung, and they said that wasn't possible, by the way, because the air difference in the pressure between like the circulation system and the outside air, like you wouldn't get an embolism just from having an open bung into a vein. But it just makes her, like, she doesn't realise that just actually makes her look worse.
Something that strikes me about Lucy Letby is that I always feel that she's trying to mimic the correct response, mimic the correct behaviour. I genuinely don't believe that she actually feels very much herself, apart from when things are against her, such as when she was crying in court because they showed pictures of her bedroom and this, that, and the other, yet she didn't shed any tears for the babies that were discussed in the case. It's almost like you're always getting this impression that she's very cold inside, like she has no empathy. That's the way it comes across, and I think that's genuinely how she is able to pass off as this very controlled, very cold, very assertive, very articulate person, despite having these sort of terrible allegations being fired at her. They just didn't seem to bother her. It was almost as if, let's just go through the motions. That's genuinely how it came across. And some people could say, well, that's because she's innocent. Well, no. What I think counts against that is that when she's pressed on questions, such as, I remember there's another example, but the one that stands out to me was when this was on the last day of her cross-examination, and they're going through some of the notes. And one of the notes said to triplet 1, 2, and 3. Today is your birthday, but you're not here, and I'm sorry for that. And Mr. Johnson said, why have you addressed it to all 3 of them when one of them is still alive? And she said, well, it's not set out as a formal letter. It's just got 3 names. And I also put Dr. A. And then Nicholas Johnson said, but it doesn't say Dr. A, today is your birthday. Answer the question, please. Oh, I can't answer that. And you just think like you've got a prime opportunity here to say, well, these people, you know, I'd cared for them, this, that, and the other. You know, I don't really know why I wrote it, but in the moment I was feeling like this. That's literally what she said. I can't answer that. Like literally just shutting it down completely. Like if you're innocent, you're going to want to explain why you've done something that actually looks quite incriminating. You wouldn't just turn around and sort of give up and be like, oh, I can't answer that. You know, that's literally what she said. It's almost as if, oh, you know, get on with it. Come on, next question. That's kind of how it felt.
Yeah, it was frustrating listening to her. There was a lot of times when you just think like, you know, you're supposed to be fighting for your life here. The whole rest of your life depends on this. And she just wasn't explaining herself. She was very good at making non-answers sound like actual answers. You know, politician style, actually not giving anything of substance. And there's so many people online would be playing devil's advocate and saying, oh, but she might have done this, she might have done that. But she wasn't able to explain any of this because if, you know, she's not. Firstly, I don't actually think she's creative enough to come up with excuses. I don't think she's able to imagine how an innocent person might feel, and so she can't actually come up with anything herself. But no, it's very frustrating listening to her.
Give me an example of this. You know, non-answers. Do you remember back to the police interview? Because I know we spoke about this a little bit. And do you remember what she said in that police interview? I'll play the clip.
I do. There have been a lot more deaths, and that I've been linked to somebody that was there for a lot of them.
Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. What concerns did you have?
I think we'd all just noticed as a team in general, the nursing staff, that this was a rise compared to previous years.
So just run me through that in terms of an example of her giving these non-answers.
Yeah, the police interview is a prime example because the question is, were you concerned about like the rise in deaths? Yes. Tell us about those concerns. And then instead of actually saying the concern, she said something like, I just think we as a team all noticed a rise. That's not an answer. That's not tell us about your concerns. She's not telling them about her concerns. She's given a full sentence of nothing. She's just said that her and the team, or we as a team, they all noticed a rise in deaths. That's not a concern. That's not saying what your concerns are. That's just saying an observation.
Yeah, exactly.
And also she's spreading out the in statement analysis, which I'm interested in as an amateur. When people say we, it's a way of spreading the blame, and it makes the person saying it feel less conspicuous. So, and she did that a lot in court. We this, we that, and she was actually angrily pulled up on it by Nick Johnson on the day I was there, because this was when she was accused of falsifying timings on the nursing sheets about baby I, and when another baby of her babies was being transferred to a different hospital, and so the timings had been overwritten with false times. Like notably, instead of saying 00:00 for midnight, it had been changed from 23 o'clock to 24 o'clock. And not many people write 24 o'clock for midnight. But and she was saying, I don't think we would have done that. And he was like, we. And she was just like, it's one person has took a pen to paper. It's not a we situation. And she's the one on trial. But she would often talk like this like spokesperson, as if she was some kind of nursing or like the Countess of Chester spokesperson, as if she was still on the team saying we this, we that.
I think another example of that, and something that I have mentioned in previous videos, is that the impression that I got of her was that she was someone who lacks accountability. I mean, even down to these handover sheets. And Nicholas Johnson touched upon this during the closing speech, and he said, even with these handover sheets that have come home, your words were, oh, they've come home with me, as if they've got a mind of their own. You took them home. oh, they came home with me. Like, she can't accept anything being her fault or that she's done anything with any intent.
No.
And Nicholas Johnson said, this lady has had 7 years to think of why she has got all of these handover sheets in her house. And her best answer was, because I collect paper. That's literally what she said.
Mm.
Again, it's taking away the specifics, isn't it? She didn't say, I collect handover sheets or I collect medical pieces of paper, being specific. She like you say, she broad strokes everything. I collect paper.
Yeah.
Or we have noticed we noticed a rise in death. It's never specific with her. She's never.
Yeah, she won't be pinned down to committing to say anything specific.
She won't be. And as far as even just the final point, even the text messages, like she was clearly texting in clinical areas. That was proven by the times that she was due to feed babies and times that she had texted people using WhatsApp or her phone. And she said, no, I would never use my phone in a clinical area, which is clearly proven to be a lie. And then she turned around and said, well, everybody uses the phone on the unit, and they would say they would also agree if they were honest. Like, you can't take responsibility for nothing.
Yeah, and so I bet she would have said both of those things really confidently, as if they was both true, and she hadn't just contradicted herself.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. Her whole way of delivering everything, no matter whether she's being caught out, no matter whether she's got more experience in terms of medical terminology than Nicholas Johnson and she's correcting him, no matter if she's just saying a yes or a no, her whole confidence level never shifts. She didn't exude any sort of anxious tendencies whatsoever. And I know some people are going to say that's because she's innocent, but I just don't believe it. I just feel that she has no empathy. She doesn't know how to relate very well. The way that she thinks and feels is a bit off.
And I know that it's a fact that people with psychopathy, basically, they don't feel anxiety unless something is immediately on them. So she probably didn't feel she was anxious. And given that she's always been successful before with playing things off and talking her way out of things, and I believe that was her whole motive, is to feel superior and clever for being able to dupe people so easily. I believe she probably thought that taking the stand was a really good idea, and she may have even thought that she was doing a brilliant job, because I think that she feels that everyone is inferior to her mentally, and she underestimates other people's ability to think at all. And I think she might have believed that she was actually doing a good job, and that her being able to saying like I don't recall and I can't answer is like a realistic answer for an innocent person.
I think the one time that I saw her completely and utterly caught out was when she had to admit that she'd lied to the jury. Well, like Nicholas Johnson said about what you were arrested in, like, why have you told this lie? Like, why have you lied to the jury about this? And there was this silence, and she said, I don't know. She just like, I don't know. And that was the one and only time really that she didn't say, well, I haven't actually, blah, blah, blah. And, well, that tried to make an excuse. It was really the only time that I ever saw her just think, oh, I literally can't get out of this. I don't know. That's literally what she said. I don't know.
Did she seem like resigned, or like she just given up, or she just couldn't be bothered, or she just could not think of anything to say? I would say
a mixture of I can't be bothered and just quite sort of resigned. It was quite a quiet response. It was almost like, why have you told the jury this lie? Why have you lied to the jury? That was it. Why have you lied to the jury about this? And then she says, like, as I said, as a science, I don't know. It's like, yeah, it's literally what she said. And then, yeah.
Yeah, so she can't even, I don't think she's very creative. She's not very good at thinking on her feet or just making stuff up.
She's not. No. And, before you get into that, before I forget, I think on this occasion regarding the arrest, she had exhausted all avenues of escape, because it was quite, I wouldn't say comical is the right word, but he's talked about the first arrest. You're arrested in your blue Lee Cooper leisure suit, as he put it. And then she said, right, okay. And then he said, the second time you were arrested, you answered the door wearing a nightie, but you went in and you got your blue Lee Cooper leisure suit on, and then you put your dressing gown on over your Lee Cooper leisure suit and walked out the house. And then he said, so you weren't wearing your pajamas on that occasion. And on the third occasion, you were arrested wearing a salmon pink leisure suit, this, that, and the other. And then he said, so you weren't arrested wearing your pajamas, were you? And then she said, no. And then he said, and you remember this, don't you? And she said, yes. He said, so why did you, this is it. So why did you tell the jury this lie? And she said, because that's what I was wearing on the first occasion. Like, it'd already gone through this once.
Yeah.
This is honestly what she said. But, well, that's what I was wearing on the first occasion. That's how quickly it all happened. He said, no, on the first occasion, you were arrested wearing your blue Lee Cooper leisure suit. Do you want to watch the video? And I thought, at that time, I thought, Jesus, we're going to see her arrest video, because this was obviously before it was released online and whatever. And I thought, oh my God, we're going to see her arrest video. And she was just like, no, I don't want to see that. No, like really, really adamant. She didn't want to see it. And then she went quiet. And then again, he said, why did you tell this lie? And that's when she said, I don't know. Because she even tried to get out of it, even though she'd explained that she wasn't wearing her pajamas. She still tried to convince people that she was. It's just weird.
Yeah. So like she couldn't think of any reasonable thing, like not even like, oh, I was confused or
exactly.
I thought I was.
Any innocent person, if that was a genuine mistake, excuse me, and it wasn't some sob story, you would have just turned around and said, well, I classed my nightie as my pajamas. But yeah, you can see, I had my nightie on underneath. Sorry, that's just what I classed as my pajamas. If it was an innocent mistake, you'd have an answer. You wouldn't just accept that you lie to the jury. And she clearly did. It was a sob story to make the jury feel sorry for her, along with the fact that she'd been isolated from her friends, not allowed to speak to anybody. And then it all unraveled on the last day of her cross-examination, and it proved out that it was proven, I should say, that she had told the jury a complete pack of lies.
What I don't understand with is it must have actually been, like, pajamas or not. Obviously, it would have been a shock to be arrested. And also, it would have been isolating because she had several years of will she, won't she get arrested. Like, regardless of guilt or not, I'm sure that was very, like, a real roller coaster for her. Like, I don't see why she couldn't have just told the truth. Like, all this,
well, exactly.
will I, won't I?
Do you know what? If I was innocent and I was asked that question, I would say, why wouldn't I hang out with my friends? I haven't done anything wrong. That's what I would have said. I would have said, why would I stop speaking to people? I haven't done anything.
And also, it is isolating. Being accused of, surely, if you're innocent, being accused of being a serial killer of babies would be very isolating. And if you are guilty, it's still isolating. So why would she just not say, like, no one can understand my position? I felt very isolated. Why did she have to make up a load of crap to embellish it?
I mean, the thing is, and I'll tell you what, this was one of the most fascinating parts of this trial. And I didn't even know that you could do this. But on the last day, I sat down and I'm waiting for it to all start. And Lucy Letby's not there. And I'm thinking, what the hell's what's going on here? And anyway, the two barristers come in. So it's just the two barristers and the judge, Justice James Goss. And Nicholas Johnson, the prosecuting barrister, says, yeah, we've got some new evidence here, or the judge said. I think the judge said to the defence barrister, oh, by the way, the prosecution have got this 27-page bundle and they're going to be bringing this into evidence. I think that's what he said. And this was on the last day. And I thought, Jesus Christ, can you actually bring in evidence at literally the last minute? And apparently you can. And there's this discussion going on. And the judge says, okay, yeah. And he said, obviously, I assume you're going to have some objections to this, to the defence. And he said, well, yeah, this, that and the other. And he said, no, it's completely fine. I don't see a problem with this. And he said, how long were you thinking of giving Lucy Letby to look through this? And Nicholas Johnson said, well, I don't know. I was thinking about, 45 minutes, half an hour. And the judge said, yeah, half an hour. He said, that's what I was thinking. And they literally gave her this 26-page document, they give her 30 minutes to read through it. And then they literally started asking her questions on it. And this was brand new to her. And I was shocked. I thought, Jesus, I can't believe they can bring in evidence literally and then say, well, there you go. You've got 30 minutes to read through these 30 sheets, all of your social life from, 8-9 years ago. Off you go, read through it. And we're going to ask you some questions in half an hour. That's literally what happened. That did surprise me.
Yeah. It is kind of surprising because this whole, I know the trial was delayed by an entire 6 months because the prosecution didn't disclose all the evidence to the defence or something. So I don't know how it works where they can just announce, oh yeah, we've got this whole other 27-page document on the last day. Yeah,
and that's the whole point of me bringing it up was that about the isolation. I think the issue is that her social life actually actually proved the complete opposite. She wasn't isolated at all. And I don't mean she was going out on the weekend or she was going out a couple of nights a week. She was going out like 4 or 5 times a week. And this wasn't just like, oh yeah, pop down to your local Iceland or your local Morrison's. Like she's going out on nights out, away trips to London with this married doctor, shopping trips, restaurants. She was living her best life. And this was the issue, that she had put it across so strongly that she had been isolated from her friends and family. And, we were an amazing team at the Countess of Chester Hospital. I counted these people as my friends, and I was told you're not allowed to speak to them. I had no one. I had no support network. And it's a very much like a sob story. And this actually changed. The rules of this changed. So she was allowed to speak to other people, but she didn't tell the jury. She had just left it as, before my arrest, from the time that I was removed from the hospital up until my arrest, I was only allowed to speak to 3 people. Everybody else, I wasn't allowed to speak to them, wasn't allowed to message them, wasn't allowed to socialize with them. And yet, just imagine how embarrassing that was. All these photographs were brought up on the screen of her on nights out, people wearing stupid hats, pictures of cocktails, people dancing. And I guess one of the funniest parts is that she even denied that. He said, you have completely misled this jury. And she said, no. And he said, he was shocked. He was like, no, what, you haven't misled this jury. And then he had to go through it all over again. She just, even then, clearly you've been caught, and she still wouldn't admit it.
Yeah, and it's so pointless. This is another example of her not realising this just makes her look more guilty. None of this is important, and it's not important to the case at all, yet she's still insisting on it. And it's basically just proves she's an unreliable narrator.
Was there anything in particular, we may have covered this, but was there anything in particular that surprised you about Lucy Letby?
I was, on an unimportant note, I was surprised that her voice was quite attractive, because from seeing, it sounds stupid, but from seeing pictures of her, I imagined her being generally sounding nerdy. But yeah, she had a very attractive voice that could be like an audiobook type person.
Narrator.
Yeah, and she, I was very surprised by how, some part of my brain found her to be credible and plausible, even though I knew logically, and listening to the content of what she was saying, it just reaffirmed that she was guilty. But I knew that if I didn't have that prior knowledge of any of the case, and I just walked randomly into a courtroom and was just sitting there, I would have not been sure. And I could really see how that she was convinced people in her real life, because just her whole demeanour and her delivery of what she says is stupid, but the delivery of it is masterful. Imagine if everything she says has imaginary brackets after it, but where she's giving extra meaning just using the tone of her voice. So she's not actually committing to saying it, but she's giving this impression just by saying it in a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's how she makes. Yeah, that's how she makes. So all these seemingly repetitive, I don't recall, I can't answer that, I don't agree, and all that stuff. On paper, in the reporting, it sounded really bad. And I went in there thinking that it was going to look that bad, but it didn't sound that bad in real life, because all these I don't recalls, she might have said it 20 times, but it was 20 different answers because she said it in 20 different ways just from using the tone of her voice. And also, I would say as well, there was a lot missed in reporting. It's not humanly possible to type out everything that goes on. What's missed is that there's a lot of scene setting. So they will go through which staff and which babies are where, who's doing what, all the nursing notes. And then she agrees, and she'll go, yes, as if where are you going with this? And so there's a lot of that which isn't reported. And quite often they will only say the gist of what happens rather than the whole list of what's actually said. There's just one other bit I remembered. It's just come into my head about baby J. So this was one of the babies where there was a hung jury. So there's no verdict for this one. Basically, it was part of her defence that she looked after this baby the next day after the incidents with no further problems. And so he showed her this big no, this big document. It was a complicated document with lots of handwritten bits. And he said to her, and who was there, who wasn't there the day before? And she looked at him, she said, like, quietly, and this was the only time I thought she looked resigned, she said, her parents. And she said it so quickly, like, I was still looking through that note, trying to figure it all out. I know she'd be familiar with this sort of paperwork, but so quickly from seeing that, she knew the parents were there, and she, like, admitted it straight away. For most of the babies, they would be attacked just after a parent had left or just after a designated nurse had left. So I think baby B was kept safe eventually by the parents not leaving her. So yeah, that was the significance of the parents still being in the room for the rest of that day. And what had happened there, basically it was proven in this cross-examination. And from reading the court reporting, I didn't think this was a very strong case, but it was basically proven undoubtedly that she was the only person left qualified to be in room 2 where baby J was when she collapsed, when all the rest of the staff was busy looking after these twins who had been admitted as an emergency. And then again, there's another twin link because she kept on attacking multiples. Only the judge mentioned this at the end. I'm really surprised the prosecution didn't make more of this. But 8 out of the 17 babies were twins or triplets, and another 2 babies had twins who died in the womb, and baby J was one of them. And then at the very same time that baby J suffered her second lot of collapses. So in room 4, she'd had some collapses and then was moved to room 2 for that reason. And then she'd had 2 unexplained seizures. And these seizures were probably due to oxygen deprivation in some way, and they was unnatural. But they happened at the same time at this emergency admittal of these twins, these premature twins who'd been rushed in at 6 a.m. And I got the strong impression, the prosecution put it that she was taking advantage of the chaos, but I got the impression that she was trying to make the chaos worse, and I think possibly try to get at these twins in the other room who she couldn't get to at that time. She was trying to sabotage, like, doing a 2-for-1, like she was trying to attack baby J directly, but also have the bonus of harming these twins by compromising their care.